really beautiful to also use your brush marks in watercolor. First of all, I'd like to talk about how to hold the brush. So the watercolor brush, you could see where it becomes a little bit thicker here and thinner at the end, and it's kind of weighted. If you were to hold this brush in your hand, you can pretty much, if I hold it right here, is probably where the center of the balance is. So if I hold it here, I can pretty much like balance it on my fingers. However, that's not where you want to hold your brush. So you want to hold your brush over here where it's really like, see how it's out of balance? It's heavier here. So the brush is leading me, and it's also a little bit, it's out of control a little bit, right? So it's freer, it's much more expressive. So this is where you want to hold your brush. There are different ways you can hold your brush. You can hold it like this and lay down the color like that. You can of course hold it vertically. You can also hold it at an angle, just like I was showing you with the watercolor wash. But one of the most important things is just to keep your wrist really free so it can turn in any direction. Also your shoulder, also your elbow. You can't see me right now, but my elbow, my shoulder needs to be really free. And don't grip your brush like this. You want to have a loose, you know, a loose hold. You want to hold your brush in a way that allows the brush to be free. In terms of making marks in watercolor, so first of all, of course, just like with the brush, you know, you can turn it, you can twist it, and it makes different brush. You can tap it, and that makes different marks, right? So this is a really big brush. You can make lines, of course, with it. You can kind of shade with it like this. So these are different ways in which you can apply the color, and in which you can create kind of also dynamic. You can create textures, but also dynamic. Of course, a different brush. You know, this is a smaller brush, so if I turn this one, might create slightly different marks. Again, I can also use the tip of the brush to just make marks that go in any directions. I can also use the tip of the brush to make dots. I can also use the side of the brush to make marks, and also dry brush. I forgot to tell you about dry brush. So taking getting some of the color off, some of the water, sorry, off your brush. You can grab some, let's see, some whitewash here. I'm going to grab some color, and as you drag it on the paper like this, you pick up some of the texture of the paper. This is called dry brush in watercolor, and it's really cool to create some textures, also to make marks that just look different in contrast to your soft washes, right? So this is a pretty small brush. You have to make lots of marks to kind of create an area of color. Of course, you can create, just like the washes, you can create marks with marks in layers, right? Just by kind of layering color over and over. You can bring in more marks in here. Leaving little bits of white paper also brings light and dynamic into your painting. So experiment with your marks. You know, what kind of marks can you make with different brushes? Of course, when you have kind of specialty brushes, like for example this fan brush, you know, we're just going to make different marks. So you can drag it through paper like this. Again, you can layer the marks. You can also use it to tap. I can't really tell you everything that you can do with every brush that you have. This is something that you have to explore, but what I want you to do is practice it, try it. Also keep the brush really loose in your hands so that you can allow it to sort of dance in your hands. Imagine that the brush is kind of dancing on your paper, creating these different footprints. So brush marks are little footprints, and it's trotting across across your painting. So that's a fan brush. Fan brush is like a brush that's missing some hair. It's been made that way. That has much straighter lines, that you can create these sort of really cool horizontal marks. It would take you a lot longer to do this with a thin brush, of course. You can shade in this way, get a little more color. So when you start to layer marks, it looks really cool. You can also, you know, of course, tap it, and then you have all these tiny little marks at once. Again, when you layer these marks, that's when they become really interesting. You can use it across like this, right? You can wave it. So and you're not necessarily trying to create very clean marks. You can see in some places the texture of the brush stands out, and in some places it blends in and becomes soft, and that's really beautiful. You can also use the thin liner brush to create some beautiful lines. You can, of course, write with it, create text. You're gonna have a script line. You can also make long marks resembling grass blades or hair, cutting right through. Of course, you can just do contour drawing with it. You can also use it into wet paper. All of these obviously can be also used in wet as well as dry areas, which will change the mark. So look at this range of marks. It's almost beginning to look like a painting. Take your tools and experiment. Allow them to be free in your hands. Allow your brush to dance on your paper. Imagine that the space of the paper is kind of a dance floor. Do you want it to flow through? Do you want it to trot through? Practice different moves that the brush can do across. I decided to do one more demo of the brush marks onto wet paper. So I'm going to... Actually, it looks more interesting when it goes dry and wet. Of course, play some music as you're doing this and allow the music to inspire your marks and also the speed with which your brush moves across. This is practice, experiments. Let yourself go as far as maybe even destroying something that you already liked for the sake of the experiment, for the sake of trying out a way to work with the brush and with the material. You can also tap on your brush and create some splatter. In this one, these are all mostly hard edges. There's a little bit of softness here, where in this one, there's some soft edges as well as some hard edges, and it creates a really nice sense of depth.